violates the creator's rights and often results in financial losses for them. Some examples of book piracy include the illegal ebook downloads, photocopying of entire books, selling counterfeit print editions, as well as unauthorized audiobook uploads. You can trust that the program will remain just as informative as it has always been. So let's add some context and localize the topic of book piracy a little bit. Just some weeks ago in Ibadan, Oyo State, the Nigerian Copyright Commission, NCC, raided a couple of bookshops. The NCC sealed stores and arrested suspects over pirated textbooks. The operation was led by the Oyo State Coordinator of NCC, Mrs. Uluropo Oke, with support from operatives of the nine. According to her, the Director General of NCC, Dr. John Aseng, has zero tolerance for piracy because it denies authors and publishers their rightful benefits. And she warned that both sellers and shop owners who obstruct enforcement officers would face prosecution. Meanwhile, a couple of days ago, another similar raid occurred, and this time was in Lagos State. So the NCC once again raided several bookshops across Lagos State, confiscating pirated books valued at over 100 million naira. The raids were carried out in the Ikeja, Bariga, Ikorodu, and Ikotun areas of the state. According to the Director General of the NCC, Dr. John Aseng, government efforts to curb copyright infringements in the illegal reproduction, sale, and distribution of creative works. The Director General emphasized that piracy remains a major threat to the nation's creative industry, undermining the efforts of authors, musicians, filmmakers, and other intellectual property owners whose hard work and innovation drive Nigeria's cultural and economic growth. So these are interesting stories we have here, and they raise big questions about education, about law, and the cost of knowledge as well. And the timing of these raids are also significant. You know, schools just recently began session, and parents have been under pressure to buy books. And you know, when there is pressure, piracy often steps in to fill the gap. So where they raided a couple of bookstores in Ibadan and Lagos, and they also arrested suspects over pirated textbooks. Now, this leads us to causes of piracy, because if we really care about the issue at hand, then it's quite important to ask ourselves and understand what's going on in the background. So let's be honest, what or why exactly does book piracy thrive? Well, first, let's talk about the price of textbooks. Anyone who has had to prepare children for a new school term, they know that this isn't easy at all. A single textbook today can cost between 5 and 10,000 naira, depending on the subject and the level. And it could even be far more expensive, especially depending on, you know, the subject of the textbook. Now, if you multiply that by the number of subjects that a child takes, then you imagine you have 3 children in different classes. All of a sudden, you're looking at tens of thousands of naira, and sometimes more than a parent's monthly income even. So for many Nigerian families, it feels like a mountain that they must climb every September. And when, you know, money is tight, as it is, unfortunately, for a good number of the population right now, cheaper pirated copies suddenly begin to look attractive. And also there is the issue of distribution, right? So let's even say parents are willing to pay for the real thing. Sometimes the books are just simply not available. You know, and publishers may delay supply, you know, schools may get fewer copies than they need. The chain between printer, distributor, and bookstore could even break down. And, you know, I've heard stories of parents running from shop to shop, you know, city to city, only to be told, come back in 2 weeks, the books are not yet in stock. So for some, that's enough frustration, you know, to drive them toward pirated alternatives that are already on the shelf ready. And also, demand is urgent. You know, school resumption is almost like a fixed deadline, right? A child just can't walk into a class without a maths or an English textbook. You know how it is, you know, when they have lessons starting on Monday. So families are often under pressure to buy whatever is in front of them. And, these pirates, they know that this is true, so they position themselves in the market as, the ones who always have it, even if, the quality is poor or the copies are illegal, because the quality is actually quite poor, if we're being honest, and we will get to that later. So these are some of the reasons why piracy thrived. We've talked about, the costs, right? The price of textbooks. Textbooks are so expensive these days, even aside from just educational textbooks, even, literary lovers in the country, they know exactly how expensive it is to get a new novel. You walk into a bookstore and, the price is out of this world, right? We also talked about, how there is an issue with distribution, even if parents can't afford to pay for a legit textbook. Sometimes the books are not available for one reason or the other. It could be a problem with, the publishers. It could be because the school just does not have enough copies available. It could be a printing issue. A bookstore has bad infrastructure and they break down and they close and there is no bookstore nearby. So these are some of the issues and, some of the reasons why piracy thrives in Nigeria. But let's move on to the consequences. Why, what exactly are the impacts, the negative impacts of book piracy in Nigeria? When pirates flood the market with, low quality copies of books, who exactly pays the bigger price? Well, at first glance, the parents, they think they're saving money, right? But in the long run, it is the child who actually suffers, because many of these pirated books, they have so many errors. I'm talking about misspelled words. I'm talking about missing pages. Sometimes you even have diagrams that are faint or, even completely absent. And for, let's say, a child, a science student, that is not exactly a good look, right? It has serious implications. And teachers have complained that students come to class with copies that don't match the original. And this makes it harder to follow lessons in the classroom. We also know that the Nigeria's, our education sector is already struggling. Just this year, WAEC recorded its worst exam results in 5 years, with only 38.32% of candidates having 5 credits, including English and mathematics, which is a sharp decline from 72.12% back in 2024. Now, the council attributed this significant drop in performance to reforms aimed at curbing malpractice, such as, the introduction of serialized objective questions and the hybrid CBT option, although technical glitches also affected some of the results, by the way. However, I don't think it's so far-fetched to also say that it's possible for poor quality learning materials to also play a part, because if children are preparing for critical exams with half-baked textbooks, right, how can we expect them to perform at their best? I think that's a factor as well. And away from the classroom for a bit, piracy kills creativity in general, right? Authors, they spend years researching, they spend years writing, editing, refining their books. Also, publishers invest in editing. They invest in, designing of these books, and they invest in printing as well. So when these book pirates come in to just copy and just sell these books cheaply, at the end of the day, the real creators, they are left without reward. And, at the end of the day, many publishers, they just cannot survive in such an unfair and hostile environment. And what that means is that there will be fewer books in the future, right? Fewer in Nigeria. So when we look closely, piracy may seem like a solution in the short term, but it's actually slowing down, our educational sector, and it's also slowly weakening teachers, writers, and the educational system all at once. So these are the consequences of book piracy. These are the prices that we have to pay when pirates flood the markets with low-quality copies. And speaking of payments, we have to go pay some bills. So don't you go anywhere. Stick with us, and we will be right back.
talking about your fresh ingredients, utensils, or cooking skills. I am talking about your choice of seasoning. My game plan is incomplete without Maggi chicken flavor. Made with a flavorful formation of onions, celery, turmeric, it's my game changer. Elevate the taste of your everyday dishes with delicious rich chicken flavor. Oh yeah, let's go.
New Maggi chicken flavor, my game changer.
This is still the Vocal Point segment about what exactly can be done as well. But before that, let's talk about enforcement, okay? Let's return and mention what happened in Ibadan and Lagos State. The question to ask is raids and arrests on illegal bookshops. They make the headlines, but will they actually solve the problem? The truth is, enforcement is indeed part of it, right? So yes, the NCC must enforce the law. Yes, pirates must face consequences. But if shops close and demand is still there, pirates will simply reappear at the end of the day. So what I'm trying to say is that enforcement without actual reform is like, that begs the question: what exactly can be done? What exactly is the way forward from book piracy in Nigeria? Well, there are a couple of practical short and long-term fixes that can be made. First, schools and PTAs, that's parent-teachers associations, can help by tightening procurement. During the raid in Ibadan, the NCC noted that many of the shops lacked proper purchasing records and receipts or documentation for their stock. So some of the receipts only show the total amount of books purchased without actually listing titles or authors. So a solution is that when a school buys textbooks, right, they can insist on seeing proper invoices that, list out these titles, these book editions, and, the book publishers as well. And when you have a clear paper trail like this, I think it makes it harder for pirates to hide, right? So I think this is one way we can, combat this in the short term. Another way I think is that publishers and booksellers, right, they can also roll out affordable school editions of these books. So stay with me now. This is how it works, right? These publishers, they can produce simple, just cheaper print runs just for the school market. So at the end of the day, what we have is that these books will be stripped down in packaging, right? But on the other side, they will be also fully authorized. So this is perfect because it solves, on one hand, the issue of high cost of books, and it also covers, on the other hand, the legal aspect as well. So it's like a win-win situation. So you don't have a problem with purchasing, and you also don't have a problem with piracy. Now, of course, these are more simple, short-term solutions, right? So how about long-term reforms? Well, one way to combat book piracy in the country in the long term is to actually fix distribution, because many publishers, they struggle to get books to smaller towns and, to schools on time. So this one goes out to the government. The governments can help by making logistics simpler. They can reduce imports and local distribution bottlenecks. They can support regional distribution hubs and create incentives for distributors to serve, underserved areas. Also, the country can invest in libraries. Just recently, wife of the president, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, called for donations to support the construction of a state-of-the-art national library. She said responses from individuals, organizations, and communities have been overwhelming, with the fund amassing over 20 billion naira in a short period. Now, I know this generated a lot of memes and jokes on the internet, but things like this are actually what we need, in the case that they are actually serious about it, right? States and federal governments, they can restore, and fund public and school libraries. They can run textbook programs aimed at, replenishing these facilities that are lacking in the country. So these are some ways that we can try to tackle book piracy in the country. Now, the thing is, to be very honest, the issue is actually bigger than books, right? Piracy is part of a wider culture among us Nigerians. A lot of us, we download pirated movies, right? We download pirated movies, songs. It's almost like it's part of our mentality to look, out for shortcuts or the easy way out of things. And it's not just in the media we consume. You're walking on the road and at the back of your mind, you have an idea that, okay, if I follow this other road, it's going to get me from point A to point B, in half the time. So it's kind of like it's embedded, unfortunately, in our mentality, in our culture. But to cut us some slack, right, it's mostly because of how expensive going the right way is. Books are expensive. We talked about this earlier. We know just how much a family would need to spend just to be able to afford a complete set of textbooks for their children while they're about to resume school. So it's not an easy task. So it will be quite unfair to make it sound like people are pirates because, out of malice, right? Not out of the fact that they have challenges financially. So it is really mostly because of how expensive going the right way is. But the truth is that knowledge has a cost, right? So creativity has a cost. And if we don't pay that cost, at the end of the day, we end up killing the very people who create knowledge and stories for us. So it feels like a necessary sacrifice to make. Of course, things are expensive. Of course, books, the prices of books are soaring. You could walk into a store, like I said earlier, not just academic books, even literary lovers are feeling the brunt of the economy as well. You walk into a store, you want to buy the latest title in Nigerian literature, and you hear the price, and you have to rethink how much you're willing to spend. Say you wanted to buy 2 or 3 books, you just have to concede and end up going home with just one book, because in reality books are really, really, really expensive. So it is a big problem that literacy is facing in the country. But like I said earlier, there are ways to tackle these problems, right? There are ways to make sure that piracy is not a big problem in Nigeria moving forward, because as a society, if we want to be up to standard, if we want to measure up to the standards set by other countries that are thriving in the academic and literary sector, then we have to make these sacrifices. We have to do the right things. We have to make sure that good measures are put in place so the average Nigerian can afford to purchase books. Because at the end of the day, a literate society is a functional society. It's when you read books that the things that you can tolerate. It's when you read books that you get educated and your rights, and you just, at the end of the day, contributes to the overall intellect of a society just by being literate. So it's an investment for the progress of intellectualism in Nigeria. the overall topic of book piracy. We've looked at, the reasons why this problem is still prevalent, and we looked at ways of curbing it. We began with talking about the book raids in Ibadan and Lagos recently, and how the NCC is trying to enforce the law, trying to let the public know that pirates must face the consequences of, selling illegal copies of books to Nigerians, trying to make sure that they play their parts, right, in protecting creativity and, protecting literacy in Nigeria by making sure that the books that Nigerians are buying for their children, for themselves, they are, they come in the best of quality. You're not buying something substandard. You're not buying a textbook. You're not buying a math textbook where the numbers and figures are, looking faint because of how much it has been reproduced, how much it has been, photocopied, how much it has been, it has undergone low quality printing. So these are things that the NCC, that is the Nigerian Copyright Commission, are trying to enforce with the raids, on the stores across Nigeria, with the reference to Lagos and Ibadan. So some might think it's a bit harsh, because of how, their mode of operating. It might be a considerable argument, but at the end of the day, it is a crime, and, crime has to be punished, right? People who engage in things like this, they do need to, be put in place. I know some might argue that, is that not a way to help promote literacy in the country? It feels like some kind of Robin Hood, activity going on in the background, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. Because if you do try to dissect the argument a little bit, they are, at the end of the day, making books available to the masses cheaper, right? So someone might want to argue and say, well, aren't they still helping people be literate by making these books easier to purchase, by making, reducing the price? It could be a valid argument in a sense, but at the end of the day, it's not like some of these guys doing this really, really care about the educational system, right? Most of the time, the reason they are reprinting this book is because, well, it's cheaper. And reprinting, you can get multiple copies by reprinting. So at the end of the day, most of them do not have the, the heart of literacy of Nigerians. They don't really care about that. They're just trying to make extra money and, just fund their pockets. So it might look like they are trying to, curb or assist parents or Nigerians who have problems with buying actual original copies due to the price. It might seem like that since their prices are quite low, but at the end of the day, they are not fighting for the good of literacy. They're not fighting for the promotion of an intellectual society in Nigeria. At the end of the day, all they're trying to do, most of the time, is to just sell as many copies as they can and fund their pockets and, run their business. So I do think what the NCC is doing is partly in good faith, at least, because it helps, especially when you look at it from the perspective of an author, from the perspective of a publisher who has devoted their time, their energy into writing, into proofreading. The publishers, sourcing for, for editing, sourcing for ways to put these copies out there into the world, and how much they give, into making original books come out, and how much support these publishers give to actual young Nigerian authors. Because everybody keeps complaining that, authors are not getting money in Nigeria, writers are poor, writers are broke. But at the end of the day, we keep, supporting the influx or the ubiquitousness of just stale, well, maybe not stale, but low quality materials in terms of printing and just repackaging of books, then the author suffers and the author keeps getting poor. So I feel we should try as a society to shun the purchases and the distribution of substandard copies of books. We have to take a quick break right now, but when we return, we will round up on the topic. So do stick with us, and we will be right back.
With the MTN YouTube Buffet Bundle, you can enjoy live games on YouTube and celebrate like crazy. Or catch up with a wide array of other sports. Highlights, so you never miss any big moments. See more, be more. Spend less. Get over 4 hours of YouTube streaming for just 250 Naira or 10 hours for 600 Naira on the MTN YouTube Buffet Bundle. Dial star 312 star 800 hash to start today and go make a difference.
It's the choices you make that set you apart from being good to being great. My choice? Nivea Men Deep Body Lotion with Max Tech, powered by Black Cavern. Gives you both dark wood fragrance and 48-hour moisture. And my other top choice for all-day freshness, Nivea Men Deep Roll-On for 72-hour protection and fragrance with Max Tech, powered by Black Cavern. Skin is for playing it smart. Nivea is for skin.
In the cooking game, you need a winning game plan. I'm not just talking about your fresh ingredients, utensils, or cooking skills. I'm talking about your choice of seasoning. My game plan is incomplete without Maggi chicken flavor. Made with a flavorful formation of onions, celery, turmeric, it's my game changer. Elevate the taste of your everyday dishes with delicious rich chicken flavor. Oh yeah, let's go.
New Maggi chicken flavor, my game changer.
This is still the vocal point segment of the Royal FM Ilorin Morning Mix program here at Royal FM 95.1 Ilorin. On the program today, we've been discussing the issue of book piracy and how it has been affecting our Nigerian book culture, and we've looked at some raids in Ibadan and Lagos states recently, and we have been talking about the effects of these raids and whether they're in the best interest of Nigerians in the long run. We also looked at how to, or at least recommendations, to solving the issue of book piracy, ways we can try to stop this menace in our literary and literacy community in Nigeria. We've also tried to recommend both short and long-term solutions, like trying to make sure that we have proper documentation, proper purchase record. We also talked about things like rolling out affordable school editions of these important books. And I think out of the short-term solutions, I think this one is a very, very important one and very wise one that could be adopted by schools, because like I said, when you have simple or cheaper print runs that is just designed specifically for the school market, at the end of the day, everybody wins. Everybody eats at the end of the day because, of course, the books will be stripped down in packaging, right? But it's a bit different from stripping down the packaging that comes from book piracy, because then you don't have the authority to do that. But when it is the actual publishers who are deliberately putting books out there that they have said, okay, we're going to use a different book material for this book, right, just so it is affordable for Nigerians, when it is coming from the actual authorized publishers themselves, then you don't have to worry about, buying illegal books. You don't have to worry about selling illegal books. So if publishers and booksellers can have this kind of partnership, then at the end of the day, everybody benefits from the action. It solves the issue of high cost of books, because a cheaper book from an unauthorized source is much more better than a cheaper book from an otherwise unauthorized source. So I feel from all these short-term solutions, this one really particularly feels like a very, very reasonable approach to follow. And we also talked about some long-term reforms. We talked about ways to combat it in long-term in the country, imploring the government to help make logistics simpler, helping us to reduce imports and local distribution bottlenecks, because these are really big hindrances in making books affordable because of the price of imports, how much it costs to bring books into the country. At the end of the day, you are a publisher trying to make sure the literacy levels are high, but at the end of the day, you have to eat, right? Everybody has to eat. So if the government steps in, then they can try to make things simpler by helping to support regional distribution hubs and helping distributors to be able to reach areas that are underserved. We also talked about libraries in the country. We reference the work of the president, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, her recent call for donations and things like that. We need more of that, and not just to put it out there in the public, right? Not just the theory of it, but also the the pragmatics of it, the practical aspect of it. Not just saying we're going to do this, we're going to invest in libraries, we're going to build libraries, and it ends on social media, it ends in the newspapers, and you go out there in the real world and you don't see any of these things. So we need reforms that are actually executed, so the people can know the government cares about literacy in the country. So, like I said earlier, knowledge has a cost, creativity has a cost. If we don't pay that cost for creativity, we end up hurting people who try their best to help us create knowledge, people who create important stories for us. But when we make that sacrifice to invest, right, when we protect authors, at the end of the day, we are protecting education. And also, protecting education means that at the end of the day, we are protecting the nation. So let us remember to play our little part in solving this issue. Any way we can, help and contribute to upholding a strong literacy standard, a strong book culture, a strong culture of distribution of books that are legal. Let us try in the very little way that we can. Keep in mind that true change will only come when we all say no to piracy, and when we say yes to supporting original knowledge. I'm afraid we have run out of time this morning, so this is where we have to draw the curtains on the program. I'll leave you with this quote by Victor Hugo, which says, "To learn to read is to light a fire. Every syllable that is spelled out is a spark." My name is Samuel Ademi, and this has been Vocal Point on Royal FM 95.1. Thank you for listening, and once again, good morning.